Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com and the Pewter Report podcast. It is a Tuesday edition of the show. This is essentially the Christmas Eve episode to Christmas Day of the NFL draft, which we will be talking all about on today's show and this week with the live draft show coming up on Thursday. We will be going through the Bucs' best bets for the 2024 NFL draft. If you don't know what that means, each position, Pewter Report has come up with two players that the Bucs are most likely to take at every single position. So we will go player by player, position by position, breaking it all down on today's show to get you most equipped for this upcoming NFL draft and as it pertains to the Buccaneers. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joining with me today, not Scott Reynolds. Scott is a little away on business right now, enjoying his birthday as well. So a happy birthday to Scott Reynolds. But fear not, ladies and gentlemen, because joining me today is a fellow colleague of mine and a co-orchestrator of many of the Pewter Report mock drafts, the 7-round Bucs mock drafts, I should say. He's got a couple of articles out right now that are my guys, his guys, in this year's draft, and very excited to break down all the Bucs' best bets with him. It is Josh Capo of pewterreport.com. Josh, great to see you, my man. How you doing?
Hey, Matt, I am fantastic. I'm on vacation this week from the main job. Woo! So I am doing wonderful. I am getting ready. I love that you said it's like Christmas Eve. And I can make a case that the draft is better than Christmas because Christmas you only celebrate for 24 hours.
So it's
and the
draft.
Yeah, exactly. The draft is 72 hours. So
that's true.
It's better. It's better. You get 3 days, 3 times the fun than Christmas. So I can't be excited or more excited. I'm finishing up my big board. I've got about 5 more. I'm going to be able to get to 150 this year. I'll be putting that out on Pewter Report. So it's a very exciting time, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be with you today.
Yeah, I'm pumped to be talking with you as well. Of course, those that are fans of Pewter Report have seen Josh and myself do a lot of the Bucs live game streams, and we always have so much fun with that. So I'm excited to share this experience with you. And yeah, there are a lot of people that are draft nuts that absolutely love this time of the year. So let's just have a ball with it, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get into all the Bucs' best bets, Josh, I think obviously we've seen your written word and things you've said on Twitter about just your overall opinions of the draft and how it affects the Bucs and everything like that. But overall, I just want to get your opinion this year with the Bucs picking at 26. I find the draft interesting every year, but I think this season in particular, I think there's more ways the Bucs can go about it than maybe in years past, and I find that quite interesting. So I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, like, should they go interior offensive line or outside linebacker? But just overall, your thoughts about where the Bucs are picking, maybe a couple of groups that you like, and how you think the Bucs should go about it.
Yeah, I think this year's draft lines up really well for the Bucs to, as you said, go in a bunch of different directions. And I know there are like two to three position groups that are, kind of needs for the Bucs. And I would say 2 of those 3 position groups are really deep. And because of the depth in those position groups, it doesn't mean that that Jason Light and Todd Bowles and the rest of the organization have to necessarily say, okay, we're going to go ahead and address this in the first round.
Right.
And those 2 position groups I would say are interior offensive line, which is super, super deep this year, and wide receiver. And some people may say, well, wide receiver isn't a big need for the Bucs. You've got Chris Godwin, you've got Mike Evans. Well, Mike Evans will be 32 in 2025. Chris Evans is not on the roster for 2025 at this point. So, and most good teams, the Bucs included, look at least a year down the line. So I would say that is one of those. The third one is edge. I'm not super high on this year's edge class, but overall, I think the Bucs have a high floor there. They've got a lot of guys who can play. So I don't necessarily think that they have to just say at 26, we're going to get the best edge guy on the board at that point, because there's drop off, I would say, from kind of the top two. I wouldn't even say the top three. I know a lot of people say there's kind of a top three. For me, that third guy, Jared Verse, is further down on my board, and definitely a tier below the other two. So I think it gives them the opportunity to say at 26, let's just be positionally agnostic. Who's the best guy?
Yeah.
Regardless of position. And I think that gives them a lot of really cool avenues that they could go with. Somebody who is, I'll let the cat out of the bag here. He's number one overall on my board, period, including all the quarterbacks. And he may be available at 26 because everything that I've seen has him not even necessarily in the first round. And I can't understand it for the life of me, although there's a little bit of a medical issue. And that's Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle out of Illinois.
A Tampa Bay local.
Absolutely adore him. And yes, there's Vita Vea. Yes, there's Kalijah Cansey. But there's tons of ways that you can get all three guys on the field, enough snaps to justify the pick. So I think that it gives Jason Light a ton of creativity that he can use, which gets me super excited for the draft. And just in general, this is a deep draft. I think a lot of value to be had on day 2, second, third rounds. I think even into the fourth round, you're going to get guys who I would have a second or third round grade on who will be available. So I can't wait. I'm literally counting down the seconds.
Yeah, I first of all, I love what you said about just that it may come down to best player available for the Buccaneers, which I think is a great situation to be in because, yes, they could use help at outside linebacker even after the Randy Gregory signing. Yes, they could use another wide receiver. And I actually think wide receiver, not that they have to jump at it in the first round, but I think wide receiver 3 will be more important this season than maybe it has been over the last 2 years because of the Liam Cohen effect and the fact that they're going to be going away from 2 tight end sets or 12 personnel and going to a little bit more to 11, which will have 3 wide receivers on and 1 tight end. So that Russell Gage role that never came to fruition, unfortunately, because he got injured. If they don't fully believe in Trey Palmer, then, obviously you can kind of nab a guy early. And yeah, I mean, it will be a super, super interesting scenario if the Bucs find themselves in a situation where, their favorite edge rusher is available, but Jackson Powers Johnson is available, and their favorite wide receiver is on there as well. There's so many ways they can go about it, which kind of makes me hope a little bit. Now, I don't want them to go too far back, but say they got a couple of guys that they like, trading back like 2 or 3 spots and adding just another pick, because for everything that you just said about, I love the value in rounds 2 and rounds 3, even recouping 1 more pick without moving crazy far back, I think that could make all the difference this year specifically.
Yeah, and I think an interesting trade partner is the Buffalo Bills, I want to say, pick at 28, if I remember correctly.
That sounds about right.
They just got a draft pick in their trade for Stephon Diggs. There could be a receiver who's kind of in his own tier after the big threes, the big 3 being Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, who are all expected to go in the first 10 to 12 picks. A lot of people have kind of Brian Thomas Jr., also of LSU, along with Malik Neighbors, as kind of like in his own tier before you get to the next group. And he may be available, and I could see the Bills deciding that they need to go and grab that extra talent. They just picked up an extra draft pick with the Stephon Diggs trade, and I could see that being kind of a good marriage where Jason Light's got a few guys in that group. He's like, I feel good. Very similar to the process in 2022 where the Bucs ended up trading back and getting Logan Hall.
Yep.
Maybe hopefully with a better result as Logan Hall's kind of developed into a rotational guy, not somebody you really, not a path that you would want out of your first pick in any draft class. So I think that could kind of be a marriage there, that the Bucs drop back 2 spots with the Bills to pick 28.
Yeah, I think that would be super ideal for the Bucs. Again, not crazy far back, but just a couple of spots back, like kind of like how we've done in some of our PFF mock drafts. I know in the live mock draft, I think we did that on Thursday's show. I think we did it in like the second or third round, but nonetheless, there are a lot of options for the Buccaneers, which is very nice to see. All right, let's get into the Bucs' best bets. So again, for those that may not be totally familiar with it, every single season we do a Bucs draft write-up, player preview of anywhere from the top 15 to 25 players at every single position. We go from quarterback all the way to safety for every single draft class. So you can check it out on pewterreport.com right now. Bucs best bets and just the draft prospects. Quarterback. I actually did quarterbacks a while ago. Today, cornerbacks came out and safeties will be coming out this afternoon as well. So you'll be able to see every single one. And then Scott Reynolds of pewterreport.com, as the rest of Pewter Report is doing the write-ups, Scott comes up with the Bucs best bets for every single position. And by that, what we mean is who the Bucs are most likely to pick for a player at every single position. But there's two players because we break it up into a player that the Bucs are most likely to pick in rounds 1 through 3 and a player that the Bucs are most likely to pick in rounds 4 through 7. And while we're not perfect at this, I don't think anyone is better in the game than Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds of being able to find the players that the Bucs are drafting every single year. I mean, last year he got like 4 or 5 of those picks. He was big the year he had Tristan Wirfs, he had Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, he had Kyle Trask. Now, you guys may not agree with the pick itself, but
that's
the prediction of and the knowledge of the pick is what was correct. Logan Hall as well was another one. I'm trying to think who he had last year. I think Trey Palmer might have been a late one. He had a lot last year. Cade Otton.
Cade Otton was.
That wasn't last
Payne
year.
Durham. Payne Durham was.
Payne Durham as well.
And Servassier Dennis, I want to say, was one as well. So what's been really cool is Scott's kind of brought me into this the last couple of years. I've been able to help him with some of these.
Yes, you have. You should get your credit as well. I apologize.
And it's amazing because every general manager, every front office develops tendencies. And Scott's ability to understand Jason Light's tendencies and the conversations we have over it. And it is fun because you mentioned it. I think it's really important. Like, we don't always agree with the ones we put out. Like, personally, it's like, this person wouldn't be on my board, like not nearly this high. But it's for you, the fans, right? It's about trying to help you understand who the team's going to take. There is something, it's nice to be able to share, this is my opinion, or this is Scott's opinion. And the Bucs have certainly taken a lot of players over the years that Scott got right as far as a Bucs best bet. But he personally was like, I wasn't a big fan of this one. Yeah. So it makes for some really great conversation. But overall, the track record is pretty solid in terms of his ability to predict who the Bucs may or may not be targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to clarify for everybody as well, because there are 2 picks for each position. Again, rounds 1 through 3 is one guy, rounds 4 through 7 are the other. There are certain positions where it's not as likely the Bucs are going to take a player in the first 3 rounds, but more likely they may take it in rounds 4 through 7. I think, for example, quarterback and inside linebacker are more positions that you probably won't see the Bucs go early, but you never know, and that's why you got to necessarily be prepared. But that's why it would be a little bit more important to take some interest in the rounds 4 through 7 type of prospects, because it's way more logical. It also works on the flip side of it. But this year, just with the options the Bucs have, wouldn't shock me if they went outside linebacker in rounds 1 through 3. But if they didn't, I wouldn't be surprised if they went 4 through 7. Same goes for cornerback in that situation, or even wide receiver.
And the other thing that I think is important to note is, we do this kind of as a complement to our final 7-round mock draft, right? Yes. Where we try to predict each of the Bucs picks, but it becomes difficult when the Bucs are as successful as they are, even just getting the first round pick, right? Because, we identified in our recent 7-round, our final mock, it is out, correct? I want to say it's out.
Yes, it came out yesterday. Yes.
So it is out. So we predicted Jackson Powers Johnson, who we're pretty certain that the Bucs are in on. But if he's taken at pick 24, there's not a whole lot we can do to say, well, it's difficult to predict what 25 other teams are going to do. So by giving you, the fans, these best bets at different positions, maybe he's off the board, but then the Bucs go with somebody else that we've selected as the best bet at, say, wide receiver or at offensive guard or tackle or something like that. And we've shown you, hey, this is somebody that the Bucs should be interested in or most likely are interested in. And even though we thought it would be this guy, he was off the board. So here's another guy that they would be interested. So you have at least a little bit of information going in that relates to who they may be in and out on.
Exactly. And, we don't expect every fan to know every single player and every single best bet, but that's why these write-ups are important as well, because even, for example, Kalijah Kancey was not a Bucs best bet, but we had a write-up on him because we do the player preview and everything like that. So you can still go to Pewter Report, find the position, and then most likely, unless it's like a 6th or 7th round pick, they'll be within those top 25 or top 20 prospects. So, a lot to learn from it for sure, even if you're more of a hardcore Bucs fan in season and more of a casual, hey, what are they doing in the draft type of person. It's a nice little cheat sheet for everybody to check out. So without further ado, Josh, let's get this rocking and rolling with the Bucs best bets of 2024. We're going to start with the quarterback position, rounds 1 through 3. This is a guy that, 6 months ago, I would have said you're crazy if you think the Bucs are doing this within rounds 1 through 3. But he set himself up better with last season and playing in the Senior Bowl, and that's Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, previously of Baker Mayfield's alma mater of Oklahoma. But Spencer Rattler is the quarterback that the Bucs is the best bet for the Bucs in rounds 1 through 3. I was fairly impressed by his Senior Bowl performance, especially with some of the big names out there, Josh, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Sam Hartman. But Rattler was kind of the guy that I wouldn't say stole the show, but did the best. Sometimes it's just being consistent and not screwing up in a number of ways where I think the rest of the quarterbacks did at the Senior Bowl. And I think Rattler deserves some credit for growing up a little bit and kind of humbling himself going from Oklahoma to South Carolina.
Yeah, I think he's come a long way from, wasn't he? He was featured on Last Chance U, I think, right? Or
he may have been.
No, QB one of those things.
I don't think it was Last Chance U.
Yeah,
it was. But yeah, it might have been the other one.
Yeah, some quarterback profile when he was much younger, and there was immaturity issues on there, but he was also extremely young. I want to say he was a teenager at the time. And since then, I think all the reports coming out in terms of his interviews and just some of the things coming out of the Senior Bowl was, a lot of maturity there that he's built over time, which should be expected as these young men grow up. When I was scouting him, I was overall I came away more impressed than I thought I would be. He can hit some tight window throws. He's got solid arm talent. I wouldn't say elite, but especially for his size, I think it's really good, not unlike Baker Mayfield himself. I think he has one of the more advanced feels for running through his read progressions out of this quarterback class. He's just a little slow to do it, which can create more of those tight window throws than he necessarily needs to have if he threw with just a touch more to anticipation. I also think he's a better athlete than he tested. I want to say his relative athletic score was somewhere around, what was it, like a 2.6 on a scale of 0 to 10. So it wasn't great, but when you see him move, his pocket movement is pretty good.
Yeah.
He's slippery, elusive, he can get out of trouble. He creates a lot of trouble for himself, though, and I think that's the big thing that he's going to have to work on at the next level is not running himself into sacks, which has been a bit of a problem for him dating back to his Oklahoma days.
Yeah, he had over 10,000 career passing yards in his college career with 77 touchdowns and 32 interceptions. Got a strong arm. He could definitely move it down the field, and he does look to throw it down the field as well. And yeah, I wouldn't describe him as like a guy you got to worry about as like a runner or anything like that. But I think he moves around well enough in the pocket. But to your point, sometimes trying to extend a play and prolong it has been a little bit of an issue for him, and sometimes makes those plays where you're like, why did you throw that football? You had no reason to throw that football. And I think that was a little more telling at Oklahoma as well, where, it was a big stage, a lot of expectations of Oklahoma, and I think he just kind of panicked at times. And the thing, though, is, and you see in the NFL, some guys just get labeled as, oh, like, he's a panic guy, he's done, he'll never recover from this. I think with Rattler, people were ready to put a label on him that he was that type of player, but then kind of, got it together when he went to South Carolina. So we'll see. Obviously trending in a better direction than necessarily he was a year ago at this time, but that's why sometimes, there are certain guys. I even go back to Joe Burrow, who obviously is the man now, but like Joe Burrow, you think about like the season before his incredible year with LSU when they won the national championship and all that stuff. He was like a good quarterback, but nobody, I don't think at the time was thinking, oh, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. Like this guy is a slam dunk, lights out guy. Then he stays for one more year at LSU and has arguably the greatest football team and greatest football season of all time. And things change. I'm not saying Spencer Rattler's anywhere near Joe Burrow. Wouldn't even compare him to be a similar type of player. I just mean opinions of people can really can grow and change throughout the time. It also kind of reminds me, going off topic real quick, Cardale Jones of Ohio State. Like he played 2 or 3 games, ball down for Ohio State in those games, and it's like, oh my God, like is he a first round pick, Cardale Jones? And clearly, sometimes you like to live in the moment, which is always fun. But anyway, rounds 4 through 7 at the quarterback position. Another guy we've talked about a fair amount and was also at the Senior Bowl, Michael Pratt. Is it Michael or Mike at this time? Because he changed it.
I think it's Michael.
Yeah, all right. Michael Pratt of Tulane. Great deal of experience with the Green Wave. Beat Caleb Williams in New Orleans a couple of years ago in that infamous bowl game. Went 21-3 as a starter over the last 2 seasons. He only missed 1 game against Ole Miss last year. He improved his completion percentage as well, going from 63.6% to 65.4%. Josh, your thoughts about Michael Pratt?
Yeah, so Pratt, here's the funny thing. I'm going to kind of compare him to the 2021 quarterback draft class.
Okay.
So you look at the 2021 class, 5 guys taken in the first round, right? 4 of them didn't finish their rookie contracts with the same team now that Zach Wilson has been traded to the Broncos in the last 48 hours.
What a run.
But if you look at it, like, so there's Trevor Lawrence who's going to finish his rookie contract. And then like the next 2 guys who are going to be able to are Davis Mills and the Bucs' own Kyle Trask, right?
Unreal.
Pratt would be like the guy I give like the best bet to finish out a rookie contract with the team that drafts him. Like he does not have the arm talent of the other players, which is why he's considered more of a day 3 pick.
Yeah.
But in terms of like his processing, his ability to know where to go with the ball, the pre-snap, the post-snap, identifying coverages and things like that, he's just a very smart, capable player who is what you ideally want in a backup. And so like I would probably give him the highest chance to have like the longest career because the expectations aren't going to be so high that he's not going to miss them. And he's going to give enough of a floor that, he's going to have what's his name? Chase Daniels type career, right? Or Blaine, later half Blaine Gabbert, where, he's on a bunch of teams, but he's been a backup for a long time. And, he'll kind of go down in the sports NFL or the sports business Hall of Fame as making a ton of money just on a bunch of 1- and 2-year deals for 12 to 15 years. Just really smart, really capable. He'll come in, he'll pick up the system quickly. He'll be able to get you all of the easy to intermediate throws. And it's the things with high levels of difficulty that will give him the most trouble because of the lack of arm talent.
That's the big thing I was going to key in on with Mike, aka Michael Pratt, is just the short to intermediate throws. He can make all of them, whether it was at Tulane, whether it was at the Senior Bowl. There's really no question or concern there, and he's not very turnover prone like some of the other quarterbacks in this draft class or quarterbacks in general. So if the Bucs are looking for a guy just to come in and, not throw away a game or not kind of break the system, and especially with Liam Cohen, and we'll probably learn this more throughout the season, because when we had Greg Cosell on a couple of weeks ago, he said, this is a quarterback-friendly offense in terms of they're going to give you the easier throws that you can make. And we saw that with Dave Canales a little bit, but I think we'll even see that more with Liam Cohen. So Mike Pratt could certainly fall into that category. And again, the experience, I think sometimes quarterbacks, like, they play one season as a starter, and it's like, that's not enough to prepare you for the NFL. I can look at a number of guys, most namely, I don't know, Zach Wilson and Mark Sanchez come to mind as two quarterbacks that only started for a year, and then it didn't work out for them. But I don't know. I think there's something to be said about the amount of time that Pratt has been a starter for Tulane, and he can carry the mantle for Ryan Griffin as well as Tulane quarterbacks that go on and play in the NFL. Let's move on to the next position, which is running back. And this first man we're going to talk about, the Bucs' best bet in rounds 1 through 3. You may be familiar with him because he's been in the last 2 mock drafts. Played at USC. Which USC, you ask? Both. He played at South Carolina and for the Trojans as well. It is Marshawn Lloyd. We talked about him a lot on the past couple of podcasts, Josh. What do you like about Marshawn Lloyd and what he can bring to the Bucs?
Yeah, so Marshawn is one of my guys. Not a ton of usage, which may, deter some people, but I think at running back, that's actually kind of a good thing. Yeah, you have a lot of running backs in this draft who have a ton of miles on them, which frankly just worries me for the wear and tear that position kind of endures. He's got good speed, good burst, 1.6 second 10-yard split, 4.46 40. So all of that checks the boxes. He can kind of stick and go as a one-cut runner. I think he's got a great combination of vision and then burst to take advantage of it. You see with some of the other runners in this draft class, like, they see the hole or developing or before it even develops, but they just don't have that short area burst to take advantage of it. By the time they're in the hole, somebody's on them. And with Lloyd, he's through the hole before that happens. I think he has deceptive long speed. His contact balance is fantastic. I want to say this past year, he had basically a forced missed tackle on the equivalent of 41% of his runs, which is an insane number. You're talking close to like Bijan Robinson level rate there. He keeps moving forward through contact and rarely has a negative play. He's shown a good ability in the receiving game, but he wasn't used much there. His catch rate is a little bit low. But from what I saw, he has soft hands. I know it's going to scare some Bucs fans, a USC running back who can't catch the ball or has a low catch rate. He's not Ronald Jones. Like, he has a feel for it.
Who also played at USC.
Yeah. He's shifty. He's got quick feet. I think he's going to work better in more of a zone scheme than a gap scheme, which I do think Liam Cohen will have more of a zone scheme. He's going to have to improve his pass protection to get on the field. Yeah. And that'll be the biggest area that I think will prevent him from developing into what I think he could be. Is he's just not a fantastic pass protection back. But Rachaad White is very, very good at pass protection. Yep. And so I don't think that's as necessary of a skill given the running back room as it is right now.
Yeah, I agree that Lloyd, I think, is faster than people realize, and maybe it's because he's built a little bit more. And I wouldn't compare his game to Rachaad White, but I do think there's enough similarities that he could fit in the Buccaneers offense, but then is also quite different from Rachaad White. I've said this on the show before. I would love for Lloyd to be the guy in those short yardage situations. Not that Rachaad White can't do it, but we've seen the Bucs the last 2 years kind of struggle in some of those short yardage running situations. And I would like Lloyd to be the guy where it doesn't even matter if the defense knows that he's getting the football. He's going to find that hole right away and just, plunge over the line to get that first down or that touchdown or whatever it may be. I also agree with the fact that he there's a lot more meat left on the bone as far as a receiver goes, and maybe he just hasn't really been able to totally showcase it just yet. But I would love to see a combination of Rachaad White and Marshawn Lloyd kind of leading the way for the Bucs running game, and obviously just attack on offense, because we know what Rachaad White can do as a receiver, and if Lloyd can add to it, that would be cool as well. Bucs pick for 4 through 7. sticking with the SEC, or going with the SEC, from the University of Georgia, it is running back Kendall Milton, who the Bucs will be a little familiar with because their new wide receivers coach, Brian McClendon, was on the staff while Milton was the running back there. He ran a 4.62 40-yard dash, which isn't, totally ideal. But he runs with nice power and has tackle breaking ability. He's 6'1", 225, and a threat in short yardage situations, especially around the goal line. He had 22 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 seasons and 14 last year. So really what Kendall Milton is going to bring is a physical presence that, again, Rachaad White is not a non-physical player, but he doesn't have the most brute of strength that I think Milton can kind of provide to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think he's very limited, but again, we're talking about a late round guy.
Right.
He would be kind of just your short yardage. You could bring him in if you definitely need a really good, pass protector on a pass obvious play on long and late downs. But I think in order for him to kind of stick on a roster, you're looking at somebody, he's going to have to show out as a special teams player, up back, that type of thing in punt formations. And that's where he would provide the most value. And then, there's 3 to 4 plays a game where you're in 3rd and 1, 3rd and inches, 4th and 1, 4th and inches, or right at the goal line where you feel good putting him in and just letting him get behind his pads and just wreck stuff because he's a former linebacker, I want to say in high school. And so he's not contact averse. He wants to bring the hammer down. And those are the situations where he would shine. And that's how you kind of put players in their best position to succeed. That would be putting him in that position.
Absolutely. Now, this next position might get a little controversial because while it is a Bucs best bet, Josh Capo absolutely hates this play. I'm just kidding. He does not hate this player. But you do not agree with if the Bucs were to pick this player in the first round. Moving on to wide receiver, Keon Coleman out of Florida State, previously at Michigan State, then played his last year at Florida State. You don't love this. You don't love this idea of Keon Coleman to the Bucs, Josh.
Not especially, not at pick 26. That's for sure. And the funniest part is if you go back to my Bucs offseason battle plans, before I was able to get into really watching a lot of tape, I had Keon Coleman as the Bucs pick at pick 26. So I hate my own battle plan already because of this. So Coleman is, a lot of people, there's the comparison to Mike Evans because they're both big, right? Coleman's 6'4", he's 215 pounds. Mike Evans is, I want to say, 6'5" himself. Probably he's probably down to 215 because he's slimmed out over the last few years. Both with, Coleman's, his 40 wasn't great. I think it was in the 4.5s, 4.6s at the combine. And then he sat on that time for his pro day, which was wild, right? Like, nope, that's as good as I'm going to be able to do. Yeah. Give me a break, man. You got to run faster than that. But when he was doing some other drills during the combine, he had, he clocked in at over 21 miles an hour. So it's kind of that late speed that comes on and he can hit some top end stuff. He's a contested catch guy, but he just can't separate. Not very well. And he's so enigmatic because Florida State used him as a punt returner. And you see these plays where, he's making dudes miss out in the open field on these punt returns and juking and jiving. And then when you see him as a route runner, none of it shows up. Like he's slow into and out of his breaks and he just can't create any real separation. So like I've got him as wide receiver 14 on my board. I have him as the 3rd best receiver from a school in the state of Florida. Oh. So yeah, I've got Ricky Pearsall. As a matter of fact, the 2 receivers right above him are Ricky Pearsall and Javon Baker. So I'm not a huge fan of him. But he is one of the youngest players in the draft, one of the youngest receivers in the draft. So there is some projection that can be put there that he could develop, he could learn, he could apply some of those skills that you see as a returner to his route running and potentially get more out of him. That's not to say that he won't be a good player. I just think that the risk versus some of these other receivers in the draft is really high. However, he checks a ton of the boxes that the Bucs look for. Arjun Manan of He's a contributor with Pro Football Focus.
You just had an interview with them, which you can find on pewterreport.com. I'll actually throw that in the chat right now so everyone can check it out.
Yeah, so he went and looked at general manager preferences when it comes to different weighted averages in terms of measurables for different positions. And what he found with Jason Light, as far as wide receiver goes, he loves big wide receivers, and Keon Coleman certainly checks those boxes. The weighted average height for a wide receiver Jason Light likes to draft is 73.6 inches. If my math is correct, that's 6'2", we'll call it, rounding off, 211 pounds. So Coleman certainly fits those that criterion, and that's what makes him a potential Bucs best bet. Maybe first, probably more second round, but potentially even sneaking into the first.
Just curious, I know you mentioned Pearsall and I forgot who the other one was, but who were a couple of receivers that you have ranked ahead of Keon Coleman that, a lot of other people have Keon Coleman ranked like around the area where the Bucs would be picking? Who are some of the guys that you have?
So for those who know my preferences, they know that I love Chris Godwin. Like Chris Godwin, I think is a phenomenal receiver. I know injuries have
robbed. They could draft him.
That would be, but there is a receiver who I see a ton of Chris Godwin's game in. So I could wax poetic for quite a while about Jalen Polk out of Washington. He is my wide receiver 7. So the first thing that like jumped off the page when I started watching his tape is he is willing to lay dudes out as a blocker. He's a strong ball winner. He makes highlight reel catches, plays through contact. He's not afraid to go over the middle. He's got late hands with great ball tracking. So even though he's not a burner, he can win deep with the hands, the ball tracking, and body control. He doesn't create a ton of separation, but he's got solid change of direction skills, a strong lower half, and he wins late in routes. So Polk would be a guy I would be doing cartwheels about if the Bucs were somehow able to pull off him in the second, although I think it might require a trade up to secure his services.
Can you do a cartwheel?
I will learn one for that pick. I can do a round off, but I cannot do a cartwheel.
part of when I've been promoting like the Pewter Report Draft Show brought to you by Celsius, I said like, oh, who knows what we'll do on the show? Like last year, Josh Capo did the Will Levis coffee.
So this year I'll do a cartwheel.
We'll make
it happen. Listen, I will learn one.
We're all about like giving you the best insight and writing and podcast and everything possible and everything Bucs related. We want you guys to be the most informed at pewterreport.com. But let's also admit it's about the entertainment. And if we can get more eyeballs because you're doing a cartwheel on the live draft show, well, damn it.
We're going to do it.
We got to do it. Anyway, great stuff on the wide receivers. Keon Coleman, I'm not going to go too much into it because we got a lot of other positions to get into. Love what he can do with the yards after the catch. I was at his first career game for Florida State when they played in Orlando against LSU, and immediately you're like, wow, this guy's pretty damn good with all the touchdowns he was scoring. But I agree with you. Running a bad 40-yard dash and not even trying to like attempt to get better it's a little alarming for sure. But they're and living and dying by the contested catch, it's a great trait to have. But if it's your top trait, it's good for college, not ideal for the NFL. So the other pick from 4 through 7 is from Virginia, Malik Washington. He is a little on the smaller side for sure. He's 5'8" and 191 pounds. Certainly would be a slot player in the NFL, and specifically in the Liam Cohen style of offense would kind of work well in the bunch 3 receiver formations. He's got tremendous hands, plucks the ball out of the air. He had 11 contested catches despite his smaller stature, and he has an insane 42.5-inch vertical. Scott Reynolds says he'd be the perfect replacement for Chris Godwin after spending a year learning under his wing. Smaller guy at wide receiver. Listen, not everyone can be built like Mike Evans, but hey, who knows? I think with Liam Cohen, we'll learn that he can find players of all shapes and sizes and kind of make them fit well into his offense.
Yeah, he had his name's escaping me now. I think he went to the Giants a couple years ago, but his number one receiver, his first stint in Kentucky, and the kid put up like over 1,500 yards. He was super small.
Yes.
Drive me insane.
They kind of used him as like a wildcat guy too.
Yeah, if you can find him, I'll talk a little bit about Malik here. So I think the big thing is he's one of many small receivers who have some really impressive tape in this particular draft class. And part of the reason why so many analysts say it's a deep class is you have all these guys who have fantastic tape, but then you look at their size and you go, can they really win at the NFL level? And there's a lot of question marks around that. And if you look at all the things that are kind of like just this is what the person is, but not in terms of their measurables, he's like super low. And his height is the 3rd percentile of all wide receivers. Weight is 25th percentile. And that's a big difference between those two, 22-point difference. And that's where I think the Bucs may say, we're willing to take a chance on him, is he's thicker in his frame, and that creates a lot of those explosive movements. But his wingspan, 14th percentile, arm length, 12th. His hand size is actually 40th percentile, which helps him out. But then you look at all the things that he does, just from a testing standpoint. He did the bench press, and he was in the 83rd percentile of all wide receivers at bench. Broad jump was 79th percentile. That vert that you talked about was 98th. His 40 was in the 62nd. 10-yard split was in the 67th. So you see, he's got these explosive movements that can help him potentially win at the next level. And that's what creates a lot of separation for him. And him able to get open to where, okay, maybe the arm length isn't as important because he was able to create enough room that he can grab the ball and he's not going to have as much of a contested catch. So it would be an interesting pick for the Bucs. He would certainly compete at that point with Devin Tompkins for kind of that small, shifty, explosive receiver role, that wide receiver 4 or 5 on the Bucs roster. But a lot of him just getting open, it's super impressive.
Wandale Robinson was
the one. Thank you, sir.
Was the player that that we were talking about. I gotta say, saying that name and watching you get all excited with the smile on your face kind of reminds me when I get a smile on my face every time I see a Celsius energy drink in front of me. Of course, Celsius is the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. We love their vibes. We try to keep the vibes high on the show. They got great vibe flavors. The Arctic vibe is my personal favorite. You see the Astro, Galaxy, and Cosmic vibe on there as well. Peach is fantastic. Tropical as well. Anyway, so I was trying to think. There's one more vibe that I'm forgetting. That Cosmic vibe's right there. Anyway, a lot of great vibes on Celsius. If you need to know where to find one, go to the Celsius store locator on their website. Punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest place where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, health and fitness store, or if you're lucky enough, it might just be your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want to get it in bulk, as Luke says, peach vibe, you can buy it in bulk. I'd recommend getting that variety pack. Because variety is the spice of life. You can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Make Celsius your number one pick during this draft season. Celsius, the official energy drink of the Pewter Report podcast. All right, now that we've gotten the skill position players out of the way, it's time to go to the big boys. Kind of. We got one more skill position. Jumped the gun a little bit. Talking about the tight end position, Scott Reynolds' favorite player in the history of the NFL draft. That's not true. I'm just kidding. But we know he's pretty big on this guy. Every man a Wildcat. Kansas State's own Ben Sinnott as a tight end. Man, he would be a pretty nice fit in this Buccaneers tight end room, would he not?
I think he would. I think he would definitely elevate the floor of the Bucs tight end room. One that wasn't one of the best in the NFL last year. Certainly has a lot of opportunity to improve. Sinnott brings good speed. He can separate against both man and zone coverage. He has a good feel for finding kind of soft spots and holes in zone and just kind of sits down in them. Consistently creates yards after catch, but he's not the smoothest mover from what I've seen. He's kind of once he gets the ball, he takes a little extra beat to kind of get underway to generate those extra yards. His lateral movement is tight, and it takes him a beat to accelerate. And then he's, as far as like a blocker, I think there's a lot of room to improve there. I don't think he's strong at the point of attack from what I've viewed from him. But I do think that he would immediately slot in as kind of like tight end 1B to Cade Otton, potentially even push him for the number 1 role and push Keeft and Payne Durham kind of into that tight end 3, tight end 4 kind of depth roles.
Yes, in it there's again another Senior Bowl guy. Can do a little bit of everything, which is nice. I think brings a little bit more receiving prowess than maybe Cade Otton necessarily can. And I feel like the whole tight end room can get better as a blocker. So why not add Sinnott as another player that can improve as well? So he's your top 1 through 3, I should say. Your 4 through 7 is Illinois tight end Tip Raymond. He is quite a different tight end than what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have added in their room. He's 6'5", 271 pounds, moves well for his size. He ran a 4.64 in the 40-yard dash. For Illinois, he only caught 19 passes for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he had 0 drops. So he's improved catching the ball. He was a team captain as well and played a lot of special teams, which obviously if he's getting picked around that time, rounds 4 through 7, going to have to play special teams. So he would challenge Cade Otton for tight end 1, but also challenge Keeft for a roster spot playing some special teams. So that's the write-up on the tight ends. Moving over to center, now we're talking about the big boys. And starting out with Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson.
JPJ.
What can we say about this man that has not already been said?
He's one of only 6 players that I've given a true first round grade to in terms of their tape. My overall first round grades, there's 14 of them, and that's when I factor in positional importance or positional adjustments. But in terms of just pure tape grade, Jackson Powers Johnson is 6th overall for me in the second offensive lineman on my board. And then when you even adding in the positional adjustments where he doesn't get a bump for playing center because it's one of the lowest paid positions in the NFL. Therefore, the NFL doesn't value it quite as much as other positions. He's still number 12 overall on my big board. So I absolutely love Jackson Powers Johnson. He's got a thick frame. He still moves really well despite it. He's got amazing strength, his grip strength, lower half. We all marveled at him at the Senior Bowl just a couple months ago because he just didn't have a bad rep. I think there was one rep where he lost early and his recovery was so impressive he still didn't lose the rep.
Exactly.
So, it's ridiculous. He's a little bit taller for a center, but the Bucs don't mind that. Ryan Jensen was also 6'5", just like him. He's got a big square frame. He plays with a square frame in his sets. He can do it all. I mean, he will be whatever team does decide to draft him, and he is our mock draft first pick for the Bucs at 26 overall on the Pewter Report final mock draft. He'll be a day 1 starter at center, and he can move over to guard if you needed him at guard. If you thought your hole or your need at guard was bigger, he's phenomenal. I see him as a future Pro Bowler in 2-3 years time.
Yeah, he's a plug and play guy that you can start right away. I've already said a lot on him the past couple of shows, and I think you said it perfectly, Josh. So don't need to add much more. Rounds 4 through 7, Tanner Bortolini out of Wisconsin, a center who I feel like we've talked about a lot on this show. We know Adam Slavan's a big fan of him going back to Wisconsin. I feel like he's been in a mock draft or 2 on pewterreport.com. He's a very athletic center. He is right around 300 pounds, so that's kind of going to hurt him in the draft process because teams don't want to take a guy that light. But for a Bucs offensive line that overall is very athletic, we know what Tristan Wirfs can do. Cody Mount can certainly move. Gedeke can as well. Adding another athletic center to this group, I think, can would be pretty good. And as far as like rounds 4 through 7 prospects go, Bordellini, in my opinion, is one of the more high up 4 through 7 guys compared to some other players in this draft. So he's your 4 through 7 guy. Moving on to guard, another player that it's time to fawn over. It is Duke offensive guard Graham Barton. Josh, they're calling him arguably the closest prospect to Ali Marpet when Ali Marpet was coming out. That's some pretty high praise.
It is, and there's a lot to like with Barton's tape. So Barton comes out of Duke. He played left tackle there last year. He's 6'5", 314 pounds. I want to say his relative athletic score was like a 9.99 out of 10. That's impressive to start with. But when you look at his tape, you know, he's got great footwork, and just the leg drive is what makes him such a beast in the run game. Once he gets attached, and he's got some really good grip strength, like top of the class grip strength. Once he gets latched onto a defender, it's kind of lights out for him once he gets his feet moving, and he keeps them moving. So he attacks with his hands. He does a good job of using his arms to maintain separation so that defenders don't get in his chest. He's quick out of his stance. He's got great lateral quickness. He does have shorter arms, which is why he profiles more to the inside as a guard, maybe even a center. And his hands can get wide. So he's got some penalty issues that he's going to have to, holding issues that he's going to have to clean up. But his upper body strength is good. It's not great. I think with a NFL program, it'll get a lot better. But it doesn't match the power in his legs. But he will displace guys in the run game. And, you know, I think most fans, what they love most about an offensive lineman is like, do they finish a block, right?
Yeah.
Do they put dudes on the ground? And Graham Barton does that. So I really like him. I know most people think that have him higher than Powers Johnson. I personally have Powers Johnson just a tad bit higher because I think Powers Johnson is more ready to take on the role he'll be asked to do from day one. But I think Barton probably has the higher ceiling down the line. But both are very exciting prospects.
So let me ask you this. If you're Jason Light, you have the pick. Let's say JPJ and Graham Barton are both on the board when you're up to pick, and you can't trade back.
Yeah, that's fine. I've got to ask for one hedge.
Sure.
Okay. There have been some whispers that JPJ's medicals aren't the cleanest.
Right. Yeah.
Assuming his medicals are the cleanest.
Yes.
And
let's say all things are even, pretty much.
All things are even. Give me Jackson Powers Johnson.
Okay. Cool.
He is higher on my board. I'm going to stick to my board.
Hell yeah. No, it's a good exercise to have for sure. But yeah, I want to get your opinion on that one. The next pick of 4 through 7, someone that was actually in the latest Bucs mock draft. So we spoke about him on yesterday's show. Boston College guard Christian Mahogany. Love that last name, Mahogany. My best friend's name is Steve Mahoney, so sometimes we call him Mahogany. Anyway, shout out to Steve. Anyway, Mahogany is another one of those players that is a smash mouth, hard nose, kind of in your face type of guy. You put him on that offensive line with some grit, with Cody Mauk, who obviously kind of has that same type of style as well. Could be a nice fit for the Buccaneers. What'd you like about him, Josh? You constructed this mock draft, so.
Yeah, so with Mahogany, I think he's a perfect example of the depth at the interior offensive line this year. I have a 3rd-round grade on him, and he's probably going to be a day 3 pick. So it shows some value there, right?
Yeah.
So he's got a strong upper body, heavy hands. He can fire off the line with strong drive blocks. He had some good athletic testing, although I don't always see it on tape myself. But he pulls well and he pops with his initial contact. And that's probably the most fun reps that you'll see with him is just when he's coming around that corner and a linebacker or a DB doesn't see it. And then all of a sudden he's on them, over them, and putting them in the ground. Those are really, really fun reps to watch. He can delatch a little too quickly and a little slow out of his stance and pass blocking. I do think he would be better in a gap system, but I think he'd be fine in like a zone system. And I do think Liam Cohn's probably going to have more of a zone blocking system as a base, but I think you'll see plenty of both. I think he's got a lot of creativity to how he does his run games. So I think he's immediately a really good run blocker. He still needs to develop his pass protection technique, his footwork, things like that. And I think that he's much stronger going forward than backwards. So he's still, and some of that's just a balance, learning how to use his frame a little bit better. But I really like Mahogany, and I think if he were a day 3 pick for the Bucs, I would be celebrating that pick 100%.
Another one of those players that's higher up if he gets into that 4 through 7 range. Moving on to offensive tackle, another player that I believe was a first-round pick and not the most latest of mock drafts. Might have been...
It's 3.0.
Yeah, either 3.0 or I was going to say Scott's all-offensive mock draft. But that's Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner. This is another situation with tackle. We've seen the Bucs do it over and over again where they kick. They shouldn't say kick, but they draft an offensive tackle and then kick them inside to, like a donkey. They kick them inside to play guard. We've seen that as a playbook of Ali Marpet and Luke Gedeke and Alex Kappa as well. Guyton has an extreme amount of athleticism, obviously way more athletic than, say, Matt Filer or Aaron Stinney ever was playing at that guard position. I'm still a work in progress at age 21, but he could be on the board at 26. And the freaking size of this man, 6'7", 322 pounds. Josh, that is a massive, massive offensive lineman.
He's a very large human, Matt. A very, very large human. We did have him in 3.0, and we talked about the possibility of him kicking inside. I think that it's unlikely at his size, just with as tall as he is. And I do think that he would be best at tackle at the NFL level. He's an athletic specimen. He's got a long way to go, though. He is very mobile, but his movements are still kind of clunky, if that makes sense. Like, he moves quickly. Yeah. It's just not fluid. And then when he is on the move, his targeting is rarely accurate. So he's still got to work on, getting to smaller guys who can move with more fluidity. But when he latches, he can put anyone down. It's just, again, the consistency of his hand placement. The thing with Guyton is all the athletic traits are there that teams are going to want to bet on him, and he'll go earlier than his tape than his current development should allow him to. So if the Bucs were to take him at 26, they're betting on him in years 2, 3, 4, 5, because obviously the 5th year option will be there. But year 1, it's going to look rough, right? And I think a lot of Bucs fans maybe aren't the most patient when it comes to that, because Bucs fans almost ran Luke Gedeke out of town 2 years ago.
That's true. They had the pitchfork.
Yep. And then the frustration level for Cody Mauch, who I would say had a much better season, but there were still lapses, right? There were still, 3 to 4 plays a game where he got busted. And it had a lot of Bucs fans frustrated. So if you didn't like those 2 seasons, you are not going to like year 1 of Tyler Guyton. That's for sure. But if he can be developed, as the Bucs have shown to be very good developers of offensive linemen, the ceiling on him is not matched by very many players in this draft, regardless of position.
The player for rounds 4 through 7 is Kansas offensive tackle Dominic Puny. We've actually talked about him on a mock draft as well. It's a possibility he could go in the 3rd round. He is 24 years old, played 6 years of college football between Central Michigan and the University of Kansas. He started 12 games at left tackle last season, and started 13 games at left guard as a junior. So there is that flexibility of playing both tackle and guard. He showed he'd play everywhere at the Senior Bowl, which obviously is a plus, and his frame is closer to Ryan Jensen. So some things of note for Dominic Puny. Let's move on to the edge rusher position. Obviously a big-time conversational position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rounds 1 through 3, Bucs best bet. Player we've talked about a fair amount on this show, Marshawn Kneeland, the edge rusher. Josh, give me your thoughts on Kneeland and his fit as a Buccaneer.
I'm admittedly probably the highest person in draft analysis on Marshawn Kneeland than anybody else. I have a 2nd round grade on him. I have him very close to Jared Verse in kind of a third tier among edge rushers. So I've got Latu as my number one tier all by himself, Dallas Turner, second tier all by himself, and then Verse and Nealand are kind of tier 3 for me as a pair. Everything with Nealand works off of his power game. He wants to run through your soul.
And I love that. I absolutely love that.
And then from there, he can build other things onto it. So, and he's got a better arsenal that he's still developing than I think most people give him credit for. What I really appreciate, so I first saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he showed a wicked spin move that you don't see a ton on his tape, although his tape is just very hard to find in general. Yeah. He showed some bend, and then you saw that in his combine testing, where his relative athletic score was like 987, and his agility scores were pretty impressive. And so I think that the bend is there. It's just not consistent. He can run as a stand-up rusher through the A-gaps, which I think Todd Bowles would absolutely love. I think the makeup is there. I've gotten to talk to him a couple times at Combine and at the Senior Bowl, and I just think that he's got the mentality to really develop himself and become kind of a big winner. So high motor, tremendous power from his base. He's the fastest defensive lineman in Mobile. He's got a good coiled leverage, but he can still win if he loses that leverage, if he gets a little high because of his play strength. He's got great length. His wingspan is over 83 inches. And one thing that defensive coordinators will tell you all the time, they're not getting on the field if they can't defend the run. And Marshawn Nealand, I would say, is one of the better run defending edges in this class.
And that's very important for Todd Bowles as well. Yeah, high motor. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Very physical player as well. So Nealand, I know a lot of Bucs fans are very happy with him. Rounds 4 through 7, Bucs best bet, a player we talked about on yesterday's show, Mo Camara from Colorado State, obviously the alma mater of Shaq Barrett. Production is off the charts. 25 and a half sacks in his career with Colorado State. The big thing on him is that he's got fantastic burst and he's got great bend as well. And obviously would make another good piece for Todd Bowles in a room of outside linebackers that already has a good deal of talent, especially young talent with Marquise Watson, Jose Ramirez. So they bring Kamara in. Fortunately, one of those two guys we just mentioned, one of them probably ends up on the practice squad once again. But a team leader as well, and obviously fits the mold of what Tampa Bay is looking for. Defensive tackle obviously is a position that maybe isn't initially a huge need, but it's also one that they could look to add as well early on. Another player that we spoke about yesterday, I believe he's a second-round pick in the mock draft, Clemson defensive tackle Ruke Ororo. I'm just going to say Aurora. Ruke probably sounds better.
Ruke is fine.
Yeah, Ruke. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ruke is really interesting. The first thing that popped off I think, first of all, kind of set it up because I think you did a really good job kind of explaining it there. Yes, the Bucs are set at starter at defensive tackle with Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea. There's a lot they've invested into that position, especially when you consider Logan Hall was a second-round pick. But I think people forget the NFL season is very long, and it tends to come with injuries. And so if Kalijah Cansey goes down, do you feel comfortable with your interior pass rush being Logan Hall and Greg Gaines?
No.
I wouldn't either, right?
Yeah.
If Vita Vea goes down, would you be comfortable if your pass rush is now Greg Gaines and Kalijah Cansey? Because you're not really going to put Hall and Cansey together a whole lot because you lose a ton of weight there. I don't either. So investing in that position group a little bit more isn't out of the question. And Ruke would be a really good investment. He's got a good rip move. He plays with solid pad level. When he has a good first step, he can explode through gaps and get to quarterbacks quickly. He's got unexpected power for a sub 300-pound frame. But when he loses his pad level, he can get driven back because of a lack of weight. So I think, he would definitely become a bit of a type for Todd Bowles, a recent type, because, again, he weighed in at 294 at the combine. So him, Cansey, and Hall would kind of be a trend at that point of kind of going lighter and quicker. But I think, as a second or third round pick, I think that would be a really good supplement to that room or complement to that room.
Yeah, I agree with everything with what you said about you always got to be adding to the defensive line because like Vita Vea is in his prime right now, but he's not going to be in his prime forever. I know they re-signed Will Golson, but he's going into year 12. And if something happens to the top two guys, you don't really feel great about the rest of the depth. And I mean, you have depth there, but like Gaines as an everyday starter for a whole season, you don't necessarily love. And so you bring in Ruke, and it can help change a lot of things. And then eventually down the road, Kalijah and Ruke are like your top two guys. Or at least Ruke, for the time being, is your third defensive tackle who would also be a starter in a 3-4 defense. And then Logan Hall's the first guy off the bench. And the versatility of being able to line up in so many different places and have, great skill sets along with it allows Todd Bowles to do a number of different things. So he's your round 1 through 3 pick, rounds 4 through 7. The guy I spoke to at the Senior Bowl, Marcus Harris, played at Auburn. Obviously, the Bucs love drafting Auburn Tigers, going back to Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean and KJ Britt. He's a little bit undersized as a defensive tackle, but you know what? So was Kalijah Cansey. He can stop the run. He's got a good burst off of the football, and is pretty explosive down at that line of scrimmage. So a guy that can really flip the switch, in my opinion. Again, just like getting to talk to him a little bit. He's very aggressive while playing, but then nice as could be off of the field. And guys like Ndamukong Suh had that as well. Not saying he's Ndamukong Suh, but being able to flip the on and off switch, I think, is a pretty important trait to have. So let's move over to inside linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their Bucs' best bet in rounds 1 through 3 is Kentucky inside linebacker Trevin Wallace. Let's see the write-up on Trevin Wallace.
Actually, I have scouted Wallace, so he's an athletic guy. I mean, his relative athletic score was 9.33. He's a great athlete, but he lacks instincts is kind of the best thing. Like you see him as a blitzer, and this is something I'll give a ton of credit to Devin White, former Bucs linebacker Devin White. Like he had a great feel for blitzing. He kind of understood how to find the crease, how to get through the line quickly. And with Wallace, you don't get that. You get a lot of the athleticism, but you just don't get he can't harness it as well as he should be able to. Now he works downhill well, and he's a good tackler, but he's just not a playmaker. He's not a Levante David, even a Devin White, because Devin White created a lot of splash plays. You're just not going to get that with him. And I think he's constantly reacting to what's happening to him rather than proactively kind of figuring out what's about to happen. And because of that, I think he's just always kind of a tick late. And if you're a tick late in college, even in the SEC, you're going to be out of position in the NFL. So a little bit worrisome there, but if the Bucs can coach him up and get kind of, especially with Levante David, right? If he can work next to Levante, and Levante can kind of get him to understand this is what you're seeing, though, this is how you kind of need to see it before it happens, then you've got a player, right? His linebacker class isn't great. I think Wallace is probably one of the better linebackers in this class. And if he were a late day 2 pick, I could see it. I think the best value for him would probably be early day 3, and he may fall that far if the NFL kind of views this class kind of like I do. But the athletic traits are absolutely there. And for those Bucs fans who are maybe a little disenfranchised with, well, Devin White had a lot of athletic traits. Yeah. He didn't turn out so great. It's a lot different getting a guy in the late 3rd or 4th than picking him top 10 overall. The investment there means you don't have to see as much of a return for it to be kind of a positive play.
Agreed. The next linebacker is Eric Gray out of North Carolina. Has a chance to go late in on day 2. He also met formally with the Buccaneers at the Combine. According to Dane Brugler of The Athletic, he says, Gray is an alpha male who loves football, crazy aggressive with a huge football IQ. He had a speed of 4.64 on the 40-yard dash. He had 18 pass breakups and 5 interceptions over the last 3 seasons at the University of North Carolina, the Tar Heels. At cornerback, very, very interesting guy. We were talking about him a little bit before the show. Michigan cornerback Mike Sanderstill, a very interesting player because he began his college football career as a wide receiver and eventually made his way over to cornerback. He can take the ball away. He's got great speed. He's got a couple of defensive touchdowns, so he's a threat in that sense. And what I was most impressed with is that he was voted as the team MVP by his Michigan Wolverine teammates, which, again, on a championship-winning team that had a great defense, and a guy that didn't even play defense until the last 2 seasons, I thought that was quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I was really impressed with him. One thing that I've noticed, this is my 3rd year doing draft analysis, and obviously working through Pewter Report, I kind of have an eye towards what the Bucs look for. As such, I tend to be lower on small corners than other analysts because I know that the Bucs don't really look for small corners. With that said, Sanderstill is my number 4 cornerback in this draft class. I have him over Kool-Aid McKinstry. I'm really high on him. My notes were opportunistic, kind of a slot zone corner. He keeps his eyes in the backfield, creating turnover opportunities. He's physical despite his diminutive size. He does have that receiver background, so he has excellent hands. He's very agile and athletic and a natural mover. He plays best near the line of scrimmage, where his natural burst and ability to click and close and his explosiveness plays up. He's got good but not great long speed, but his body control and quick feet are extremely impressive. He can blitz from the slot. He's actually a solid run defender despite his smaller size. And coming from Michigan, that's kind of like something you have to be, right? You have to be a good run defender. It's just kind of what Harbaugh instilled in them. His lack of size would maybe limit his ceiling as an outside corner. I think there may be some teams that would still take a chance on him on the outside, but I think he has the ability to, by year 2, be like a top 2 to 3 slot corner in the entire NFL. So I love him. I think he's phenomenal.
There's a lot of splashiness to his game, which I think just makes him an exciting player to watch overall. Last corner, rounds 4 through 7. Arkansas cornerback. Arkansas. I usually say Saw, where I'm from. But Dwight McLovern from Arkansas, a.k.a. Arkansas. Another guy that can just flat out take the football away. He's 6'1", 185 pounds. He had 8 interceptions and 30 pass breakups over the last 3 seasons. He ran a 4.47 in his 40-yard dash, so pretty good speed-wise. And he's very physical as well, especially in man coverage. Could be a developmental corner for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We got one more position to go with the safety position. You'll see that right up on pewterreport.com sometime soon. Don't worry, we did not forget about safety. Right before we talk about safety, though, let's talk about our good friends over at the Eric Gross Group, the best realty group in the Tampa Bay area, and, of course, the official realty group of the Pewter Report podcast. It takes a full team effort to win a football game, and it takes a full team effort to win in real estate. The Eric Gross Group has done hundreds of transactions in this crazy real estate market and has experience in all types of situations. With their strong team of vendors and a network of over 85,000 agents, the Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling a home into a reality. Let the Eric Gross Group take the pressure off. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Eric Gross Group. Check out their website at housesinfla.com or give them a call at 513-907-4271. That's housesinfla.com. And their number one more time is 513-907-4271. No matter where you are on your home ownership journey, you'll feel welcome with Eric Gross and the Eric Gross Group, the official realtor of pewterreport.com, and, of course, this lovely podcast. All right, Josh, let's take it home. We appreciate the turnout by everybody as well. we usually don't go this long, but it is draft season and it is Christmas. And so why not stay late with it? First guy, Georgia safety, Tyke Smith. Scott and I have talked a fair amount of him. Just a guy that can do a little bit of everything, not comparing him to Antoine Winfield Jr., but in the sense that Antoine can play back. He can take the ball away. He can play up front. He makes tackles. He rips the ball out. Tyke Smith, who played with Todd Bowles' son, Troy, who Todd Bowles probably knows pretty well. Just another guy that can add a lot to a defense with what he can do at safety.
Yeah, so this is kind of one of my big bold takes. Tyke Smith at this moment is my number one safety in this class. So I've got him ahead of his teammate Javon Bullard. I've got him ahead of Cole Bishop, Cam Kitchens, and Tyler Newman. So now he is very role specific. He's more of a box slot safety. He's best when he's near the line of scrimmage. He's a playmaker in the backfield. I think he had 8.5 tackles for loss last year. He's a physical run defender. He loves to pop guys, but he doesn't throw shoulders wildly where it can also turn into missed tackles. Like, the technique is sound, and then he'll still break your bones. And then as a slot defender, like, he played star at Georgia, right? The star position's kind of like that do it all, just really, like, the whole defense rotates around this position. So I think that's huge, that they trusted him with that role. And he's also a ball hawk. Like, if there's a ball thrown near him, he can get his hands on it, and he's not going to drop it, which I know a lot of Bucs fans get very frustrated with the Bucs secondary for their lack of ability to hold on to potential interceptions. I think Tyke's got great hands. I'm really excited about him. Like I said, it's my big, bold draft take of the season. I haven't scouted a ton of safeties, but he's number one on my board. And I think he could be a great fit next to Antoine Winfield Jr. down the line, as kind of that more box defender, letting Winfield play center field.
I respect it, my man. And last but not least, Air Force safety, Trey Taylor, the cousin of or nephew of Ed Reed. There's relations to Ed Reed. Athletic type of player, but Josh, any thoughts on him as we round this out?
Yeah, so Scott got to scout him more than I did. I didn't get a chance, but I will rate off just kind of Dane Brugler's one-liner for him. Overall, Taylor is quicker than fast and might have a tough time covering NFL receivers from the post, but his instinctive ball skills and feel for route concepts can help him overcome an average range. He reminds me a lot of DeMar Hamlin when he was coming out of Pittsburgh. So you can kind of see a little bit of a theme there with some of the secondary targets that we've identified that the Bucs might be in on. All of them have great ball skills, because that has been something severely lacking from the Bucs secondary over the last few years.
Yes, it has. I mean, they have to take the ball away, whether it's cornerback or safety. I mean, Antoine was balling with just the forced fumbles, but I don't think you can rely on that year in and year out, where those are more kind of all over the place, where interceptions are, I think, can come in bunches more, and obviously the Bucs have dropped many, so they've had the opportunities to get it done and just haven't really been able to. All right, folks, that is all of the Bucs best bets. We'll have an article about it on pewterreport.com that you can read about tomorrow. Josh, fantastic insight. Can't thank you enough for all you've done for Pewter Report and this show specifically, making it better with you on, so they don't just have to listen to me. Friendly reminder for everybody, there will be no show tomorrow. There is no Pewter Report podcast tomorrow, but we have so much in store for you this week with the draft. The Pewter Report live draft show presented by Celsius. We're doing it all 3 days on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday during the draft, but we will start on Thursday, April 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's 1 hour before the NFL draft starts. You can find it right on our YouTube channel. We go from an hour before the draft each day on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we go until the last pick is done. We obviously talk a lot about the Buccaneers and the NFC South and who the Bucs are going to pick as the picks get closer, who we think they're going to target in that situation. And then by day 3, it's kind of chaos, and we talk about everything. And of course, we lead it with the chat as well. And if you have a super chat us, of course, we get to it. By the way, we got a late super chat from Grizz. Thanks, Grizz, for the $2 super chat. What's the gap between Jackson Powers-Johnson and Zach Frazier? Asking specifically for you, Josh.
For me, it's a pretty big one. Like I said earlier in this show, Jackson Powers-Johnson's one of like 6 or 7 guys who has a true first-round tape grade for me. I am pretty low on Zach Frazier compared to most. I have him with a like high 4th, low 3rd round grade. I actually have 2 centers ahead of Frazier besides JPJ, being Cedric Van Pran from Georgia and Hunter Norzad from Penn State, who I'm really high on. I think he was one of my guys on my guys offense article. So I think there's a pretty big gap, but there are a lot of really good analysts out there who see a little bit more in Zach Frazier than I do. I do think that most have a solid gap between the two. So I hope that answers your question there.
And you'll have more of that insight with the Pewter Report Draft Show coming up. Like I said, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Please like and subscribe. And again, if you have thoughts and opinions, we'll get to as many as we can, but super chats let you cut the line, and we make sure we get to every single super chat. So no show tomorrow, and then we start the Pewter Report Draft Show presented by Celsius at 7 p.m. on Thursday, April 25th. In the meantime, please follow us and like and subscribe on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report, and subscribe to Pewter Report TV. We do the podcast, the live draft show, various clips. We got a lot of great draft stuff coming up as well. Please subscribe, leave a comment on this after it's done. And that's going to do it for us on today's show. So for Josh Capo, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you on Thursday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast and the live draft show. So until then, out.
Out.
Happy birthday, Scott Reynolds and John Cena.